Hello and welcome to episode 8 of the Ancestral Craeft podcast. I'm so happy to be venturing back out into the web to connect with you all. For those new shining faces, a warm welcome to you for joining me for another seasonal glimpse into my life here in Scotland, which I share with the plants and animals I call my friends. For those who know and treasure this little space, welcome back. I'm so grateful for your ongoing support and enthusiasm for my craft. As always, the deepest of thank yous to my patrons who have continued to show up and celebrate what I offer here. In this episode, I will share with you what's been happening in the garden. When we last connected, seeds were being sown into the earth, and since then plants have grown, flowered, and set fruit and seed. I will also be sharing what's been on my spinning wheel and spindles. There's some knitting and a little bit of sewing, and at the end I'll share with you some footage from my wild camping trip to the Isle of Arran, which is sure to make your heart full. So settle in, grab yourself a warm cup of tea, and let's be inspired together. The garden this year has been a labour of love, with an emphasis on labour. My mind and body have been consumed with the task of growing and nourishing the crops that are destined to land in the hands of the local community. We've been growing pumpkins, courgettes, peas, beans, carrots, to name a few. It hasn't just been food production this year, but also fibre production. As a nod to this garden's medieval origins, I've been growing flax to demonstrate the process of creating fibre to spin. From sowing the seed in dense rows, the flax shot up with such vigour, and within 3 months it had flowered and set seed, starting with its delicate blue flowers and ending with its golden seed pods. I was so struck with the way flax moves in the wind, almost as if it's singing and dancing to you when you brush past it. 100 days after sowing, we pulled the flax and left it to dry before rippling the seeds and retting the fibres. We did this as a community at the garden with a rippling hackle that had been made by one of our volunteers, Alan. We then spent the afternoon winnowing the flax seed in the light wind to save the seed for next year. We've dew-retted it and left it to dry. It might end up being a winter activity together to process it, or perhaps it might wait until next spring, early summer. I've immensely enjoyed the whole process so far, and I'm so grateful to have connected with the spirit of flax this year. Hello and welcome back to the Ancestral Craft podcast. My name is Alexandra and I'm a maker based in Edinburgh, Scotland. For those of you who are returning, thank you so much for being so patient and for giving me so many encouraging words during my little break. And by little break, I mean the whole of the growing season in the UK. I'm really sorry for not recording sooner. I work as a gardener as a full-time job. And earlier this year, as I described in my last podcast, I started a new job as a head gardener, and that has been all-encompassing. So I decided to listen to my body and listen to my abilities and to only record out of the growing season. And I think that's really important to realise that there are seasons in nature and there are seasons within ourselves. And for me, the summer is such an intense time, and I've always struggled with the intensity of summer, and I think a lot of you crafters might agree. And I always kind of look forward to the time where the leaves fall off the trees and things slow down a little bit and we can really deepen into our crafting practice and connect with community and prepare ourselves and nurture ourselves ready for the next growing season. So that's where I've been. I've also moved house, so you'll notice that I'm in a different space, and hopefully you will notice that the lighting is a lot better. However, it is the beginning of November. It's the 5th of November right now, and the light is very changeable. So I'm recording this as early as possible and hoping that I can get it all out in one fell swoop. So without further ado, I would like to start with the spinning segment of this podcast. So spinning for me has been my new obsession. It always has really connected to me, and I've found that I've wanted to include spinning in all of my fibre crafts, whether that be the weaving or the knitting. I am really loving using my hand-spun to craft objects. It feels very special to connect with the shepherds in the UK and in Scotland specifically, and to make objects that really hold all of the beautiful qualities of the land around me. So I'm going to start with something that you might recognise, which is my Cheviot Cross Shetland fleece spin that I had started in the last podcast, I think. This was a fleece from Sue of Hawkshaw Sheep, and I spun all of that fleece up since last time and made a DK weight yarn. You have to forgive me, there's hair on this. And I'll try and give you a good image, maybe. We'll go. And it's just a lovely natural yarn. And it's spun worsted. I used combed top that I made, and yeah, I've spun it all up and I've knit one square of the intended project. So I spun this with the intention of making the Kerry Kyle blanket by Kate Davies, and I've knit one. So this is my square, of the Kate Davies Kerry Cow blanket. And it's I think it's quite common to use a pinhole cast on for squares like this, and you work from the center outwards. And yeah, it's a series of eyelets, of increases, decreases to make this beautiful, almost cathedral-like square, and the shadows show that beautifully. And when you hold this up to the light, it has the most beautiful effect, and I'll try get some footage of it in the light for you. But I've only done the one square because I really struggled to knit these squares. And I've tried to cast on the second one so many times, and it's just so fiddly in this center portion. I'm using DPNs, and then I'm using kind of the yarn over increases as described in the pattern to start expanding outwards. And there's something about using the DPNs on a pinhole cast on with yarn overs and lots of intricate stitches when it's all kind of tangled together. I find it really complex, and I've tried it with magic loop as well, and it wasn't working. And somehow I made this one, and this only took me maybe a day and a half, and I don't know what's different about my ability then and my ability now, but this one flew off the needles. I struggled to cast on the other one, so I've just accepted that this blanket will take a while, and I'm not going to force myself to make more squares if it's just too exhausting. So next time I feel able to do this, I will continue with this project and I will get another one done. But everything's spun up. I just need to do all of the knitting for this hand-spun project. But it's going to be really, really beautiful when it's done. I really love the way this yarn has worked. And I think I detailed in my last episode that I had changed my prep. I was initially doing a woolen prep, but it didn't show up the cables as well and the kind of the eyelets and all of that. So I did it with combs instead and did a worsted prep. So yeah, that's what I was working on. And yeah, that will be done soon. The next hand-spun project I have is from one of my fleece boxes. I get the fleece boxes from Beck from the Woven Briar. She does one fleece box every kind of equinox or solstice, and the most recent box in autumn we received some wool from two sheep called Bonnie and Billy, and these are little lambs, and I'll put some pictures of them on the screen for you because they're so lovely. And what we got was some beautiful lamb's fleece, and I'll put some footage of the stuff that I've spun up so you can see. But I started by spinning up the wool from Bonnie, who is the brown wee lamb that has the eyes, and I've made a beautiful kind of woolen spun and woolen prepped sample from that fleece. And I spun this on my Turkish spindles, so I will put some footage of my Turkish spindle in there. And yeah, it's probably a DK weight, and it's really airy and bouncy. And I spun this in the grease. I've loved spinning in the grease. It's a really magical feeling. There's nothing quite like it. And I love the smell personally. And this fleece was so clean that it really didn't need any dirt taken out of it. So I didn't even, give it a rinse. I just went straight to it and kind of carded it up and started spinning. And I really enjoy that process. It's not for everyone, but there is something really nourishing and grounding about doing that. So yeah, I think Sarah from Fibre Trek explains it best in one of her recent episodes where she's spinning a beautiful Romney fleece. And yeah, I just think it's the most beautiful chocolate colour. And I wanted to make a pair of fingerless mitts, but obviously this isn't enough for a pair. So I have the other lamb's fleece, which is from Billy, and Billy and Bonnie are twins, so you've got the little black sheep and the brown. And I'm going to spin this up in the same way. It really is gorgeous. It's not black, it's a very dark brown, as all things in nature really. But it's got those beautiful colours in it. And I really wish you could feel this with the grease in it still, the lanolin, and the fact that it's a lamb's wool. It really is just very special. And I think I can see here, so you always get a little information pack in your fleece box. And this is from an Icelandic mum and a Shetland ram, so a Shetland dad. So it's a Shetland and an Icelandic cross. And it's really, it's just stunning. I just love the smell. And I get most of my fleeces from Beck from the Woven Briar. She gets her sheep blade shorn, and that has a really beautiful preparation to work with, I find. It's just a lot cleaner and it's a lot more gentle on the sheep. And she just has a way of curating the most beautiful fleeces. And yeah, I love supporting her work. So I'll put all of the links that you need in my show notes. So please do check her out and give her some love. And after receiving these beautiful lamb fleeces in the fleece box, I saw that she had released some lamb's fleeces. So I'm not going to talk too much about it because I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet, but I just wanted to show you how beautiful the things she puts together are. And this is a Shetland lamb fleece, and it's a beautiful soft grey. It's just so beautiful. And I have 775 grams of this fleece, and I will probably make some rolags or card it up into bats and make something really nice and warm. I think a shawl would be absolutely beautiful So here are the details, of this. And she always sends it on these little cards that you can plant that has seeds on them, which I think is lovely. So please do check out Beck from the Woven Briar if you're based in the UK, and try some of her fleece. They really are stunning. So I have 2 more spinning related things. I'm going to leave the socks till last because they're quite special. So the next spinning project that I've been working on during the summer mostly is preparing 2 fleeces that I'm using to blend together to make an alpaca wool yarn. And in the last episode, I think I showed you the alpaca fleece that my sister got me for Christmas, which she got for me from John Muir Alpacas in East Lothian. And for my birthday, I actually got to go and walk the alpacas there and meet Harry, which is the alpaca that gave me the fleece. And I'll put some footage of the pure alpaca by itself because I don't have any to hand right now. I do have some of the Romney that I used in that blend, and it's a beautiful, beautiful fleece. I still have lots of this fleece left, and I will even after I've prepared and spun everything I need for this shawl. Because it's a 25-75% alpaca, I'm using more of the alpaca wool than I am this Romney. So I think by the time I've done this project, I'll have enough to do a whole project just in this Romney. So I'm using 25% wool just to give it a little bit more body and a little bit more elasticity. The alpaca by itself is quite drapey, so when you put them together, you get the best of both worlds. And I had the alpaca before I had the Romney, so my thought process when choosing this Romney fleece was I wanted something that had a very similar staple length. So a staple length is just the length of the lock from butt to tip without it being stretched. And the reason I wanted the 2 fibres to have a similar staple length is because I knew I wanted to blend them together and I wanted it to be quite seamless. And when you're combing, it will naturally take the longer fibres first and it leaves the shorter fibres behind. So in order to get it to, homogenize in a better way, I needed to make sure they were similar staple lengths. And that worked really well, which what you can see is it's quite a balanced colour. It's not very variegated. And that's exactly what I wanted. And hopefully I've put some footage of the alpacas in for you because I think we'd all enjoy that. So I have lots of this Romney from Fernhill Fibre and this alpaca from John Muir Alpacas. And alpaca fleece is huge. So I'm gonna have alpaca for years to come, I think. And so that's what I've been working on. And I was preparing a lot of that this summer, and I spun up my sample for the bowline wrap, and that is in the Salt and Timber book. I'll put a picture of it up on the screen. And I knit a garter swatch in that yarn, and it's a beautiful warm cinnamon, almost peachy in tone, and depending on the light really. And it's a beautiful, elastic, but really drapey and soft. You can see just how that drapes from a small swatch. So with a big wrap, this is just going to be divine. I'm really going to love doing this. It's just so special being able to meet the animals that I'm working with their wool and their fleece and making objects that are going to be treasured by me for years and years to come. So I have got 1 bobbin full, which I'll put some footage in, and I'm working on the 2nd bobbin, and that will give me a really big skein of yarn. And I reckon for this project I'll only need about 2 full hand-spun skeins, which is usually just more than 100 grams when you spin a full bobbin and ply them together. and it's a 2-ply, I should say. It's a 2-ply, and I'm spinning this on my Ashford wheel. So yeah, this is a really fun little project that I'm working on, you know, when I have a few spare moments to work on my wheel and some little mornings to just spin a little. And I'm hoping in the next month I have the wool spun that I need for this project, and in the new year I can cast this on. When we get to the knitting segment, you'll know why it has to wait till New Year. Much of this next project left in the wool to show you. I have it in a finished object. So I've spun a sock wool from a 100% Jacobs roving from, again, my fleece box with Beck. And I really don't find that I have to buy much wool for projects with the fleece box and with fleeces that I buy. It is becoming more of my practice to use fleeces to make the finished objects, and if I have a very specific project in mind, then I will, you know, buy wool for it. But I just haven't found the need recently. I've got so much roving and fleece and things like that to work with. So that is what I have left. And when I say I spun a sock yarn, it's a 2-ply, but because Jacob is quite hard wearing, I've just given it a really high twist in the hope that it will be quite hard wearing, but only time will tell. It's all very experimental when it comes to 100% natural sock yarns. But what I've been working on is a pair of socks that I designed, and I haven't designed it to publish. I've released the recipe for how I came up with this design on my Patreon. But I haven't actually, and I don't intend to sell my designs or anything because I just like to play and I don't really want that to be part of my job, if I'm being quite honest. But these are some cabled socks that I made, and I'm not sure how well they'll show up because they are quite a light colour. And it's got a cable panel on the front with 2 different types of cable. It's got a basic kind of 2x2 cable here, and then a nice kind of, I don't remember what you call this type of cable. I don't remember. But it's got a folded 3x2 cuff, and then it's got a slip stitch heel and a heel flap and gusset, which is my favourite type of heel construction, and then a wedge toe. And I'll put some footage of me wearing these in. But yeah, I knit this beautiful pair of socks, and I'm really, really happy with them. And this was kind of inspired by my trip to the Isle of Arran in summer. I went on a wild camping trip, and we just spent a lot of time on the shoreline, kind of hiking and being in the forest and things like that. But I was really taken by island life and the waves and the hills that are on the Isle of Arran. They call it Scotland in miniature for a reason. It has like very dramatic mountain ranges, and it has the beautiful shorelines. It's a really beautiful place. And I look back on that trip with fond memories, and I'll put footage of that trip at the end for those of you who are interested in all the camping shenanigans. But these were inspired by that trip, and the reason that I am not releasing the design is because this is my attempt at really learning the craft of knitting. I would love to be able to just sit there in the middle of nowhere with no internet connection and make a jumper or make a pair of socks, and to just have that information in my brain of how you actually do that. I want to be able to not follow patterns and to just really let my creativity go wherever it needs to go. And I thought socks were a good place to start because it's not too intense to learn how to make socks. I followed this book called Sock Architecture by Lara Neal, and this was recommended by, who was it recommended by? Lisa from Soulful Spinning in her From the Bookshelf section. And it was a great suggestion. In this book, it tells you everything you need to know about how to come up with your numbers, different types of heels and toes, and to do socks bottom down and top up, bottom down and toe up, should I say. And yeah, it has absolutely everything you need to know if you want to learn how to make a pair of socks and to put your own designs in there. You can. So all I did was I followed those kind of instructions that I needed for separate elements. I made my own chart to make my cables. And yeah, that was all there was to it. I blocked them, and I haven't worn them yet because I've been putting that off to show you them first. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been working on in my spinning practice. What I'll be working on next is probably another fleece after I've got this bowline wrap finished, and maybe a pair of tights. That's my new kind of obsession. I would love to knit a pair of leggings or of some description. I don't know if they would be footless or with a foot. I think probably footless. But I would love to just expand my layers of clothing, and it just seems really fun to knit a pair of leggings. I don't know. I haven't really seen many patterns, but maybe I can make something up. I don't really know. But that's all I have for the spinning segment for this episode. I'll be sharing some of my knitting in the next bit. But yeah, I really do encourage you to try spinning if you haven't. And if you do spin, really challenge yourself to spin yarn that you're going to use for projects and see how it ends up, because there's an element of spinning that you don't really understand the yarn you've spun until you can actually work with it. And yeah, you learn so much from that process. And it's just so wonderful to be able to knit a garment from hand-spun. So let me know, if you're a spinner, what have you been working on? If you're thinking about spinning, what is it that holds you back or you think is a challenge? And maybe we can all help each other. But yeah, if you would like the pattern for that sock recipe, it is on my Patreon. So yeah, I will catch up with you in a bit. So, the knitting segment. I'm sure this is the segment that most of you are looking forward to. There's a lot of knitters that gather here. So, I will share with you 2 finished objects that I've worked on since last time. One of them you've seen before, one of them you haven't, and also a work in progress. And then I have a little sewing project to show you at the end if you're interested. So the first thing I'm going to show you is one that you've seen before. In my last episode, I had just cast on and was working on the Corpse Song shawl by Lotta Lundgren, and it's a beautiful triangular shawl, like kind of an asymmetrical triangle with a garter ridge, like garter wedge really, segment on the end, and also a woven band on the side with a darker colour. And then the eyelet design is to look like ravens, so that's what the pattern name means, Raven Song in Swedish. And I bought this as a kit from the Berlin Yarn Company, and it's their wool, their kind of fingering weight bog cotton for the main colour, and the edging is in something, I think it's called peaty brown, but you could probably check that online. So I have been working on that pretty much in the weeks after the last podcast, and I finished this pretty soon. So this has been a finished object for a while, and it's been worn a lot. And the way I kind of wear it is let me see, I like to wear it over my shoulders with a little bit here tucked down, and then I like to wrap the majority of it in front so that the garter edge is on display, and then I usually just put a shawl pin here, and it's just a little bit at the back. But yeah, with a shawl pin, I really love this shawl. It just kind of really hugs you, it's not too restrictive, and yeah, it's a really beautiful design. This is one of the patterns in the 52 Weeks of Shawls book by Lina magazine, and I would really recommend knitting it. I don't really have too much to say about it because I followed the instructions, I made no modifications for once, and yeah, I think I got gauge as well, so everything is the same. You can find the details for it in my show notes. But yeah, it's a really lovely project, and this yarn is stunning. I would use the Berlin Yarn Company's yarn for another project. It's just got a lot of rustic feel to it, but it hangs beautifully, and the stitch definition on it is just wonderful. I've fallen in love with kind of natural sheepy colours, and specifically really light creams. I don't know why, there's just something about the different subtle shades in a really light fleece that's appealing to me at the minute, and I'm just gonna go where that takes me. But that's the first finished object. The second finished object is one that I started in September. Like I say, I did take a big break from knitting during the summer. I was working and then maybe doing some fibre preparation on the side, and then maybe doing little bits of tinkering with natural objects, but I'm not going to show you everything I've been working on this one episode. It would take far too long, and you know, we've got plenty of time to catch up with one another. and I'll show you some other things in the winter episode. I don't know if I made it very clear, but I think this podcast will become a seasonal podcast. I'll release one autumn, winter, spring and summer, and it will reflect, what my practice looks like at that time. And perhaps in autumn and winter it will be quite busy, and then in spring and summer it might, die down a bit, or maybe the crafts will change, the materials will change. But for now, we're in my favourite place, which is Woolly Wools. And this is one, like I say, that I started in September. This is the Rider Pullover by Amy Christophers. And it's really hard to show this one, so I'll probably insert some footage of me wearing it. But it has a satin sleeve construction, and I haven't blocked the arms yet, so they're a bit baggy on the underarm. But you set them in with an S curve, so it's very similar to sewing when you make an S curve sleeve. It just removes a lot of the bagginess under the arm. I really like the way this satin sleeve fits on my body. It really just sits at the very edge of my shoulders, and I think it gives a really nice shape from the side, and I'll try highlight that when I show you in the footage. But the reason it's got an interesting neckline is because the back and the front are exactly the same. There are no short rows or anything to raise the back, because the neckline goes quite high, and you knit the body from the bottom up to the underarms, and then you split the front and back, and you knit both sides up into the neckline, and then you seam together with a 3-needle bind off the shoulder, and then you knit the sleeves from the cuff up, which I really enjoyed. I quite liked being able to just try the sleeve on and wait until it reached my underarm. And then you do the cap shaping, and then you sew them in. And it's got these really long cuffs of 3x1 rib, which I must say is one of my favourite looking ribs. I just think it looks really neat, and it's just got a certain quality to it that I love. And this is knit in Nutiden. I knit in Nutiden a lot, but I don't knit a lot in general, so it's not actually that much. I had this yarn from one of their updates, and this is actually all I had left of like a sweater quantity of Nutiden. So now that's all of my Nutiden gone from the stash, except for maybe a plate here and there of leftovers. But I really wanted to just use up the last bit. And I owe the completion of this project to my friend Ailey, who has a beautiful knitting Instagram called @Ailey_knits, and I'll put the link to that below. But she's a beautiful knitter, and I ran out of yarn at the very end. I had knit up to the underarm on my second sleeve, and then I ran out, so I had no yarn left for the top of the cap. So that was unfortunate, but I put out a message on Instagram and Ailey got back to me, so that was much needed and an absolute saviour. So yeah, it's finished, it's done, I can just wear this now. It's a really practical jumper, it's really warm, it's quite thick, and because it covers a lot of your neck, it really just keeps a lot of heat in. And I love wearing this with some jeans, or you can wear it with skirts, you can wear it on top of dresses. It's really versatile, and yeah, I'd probably even wear this to work. So because I'm a gardener, I don't actually get to wear nice clothes that often. Maybe on the weekend I do if I'm indoors, but the majority of my wardrobe is my working wardrobe. So I'm not too precious about my knitwear. My Versal by Albina McLaughlin, that gets so much wear, and I wear that to work in the winter all the time. And the Nutidin is holding up beautifully to that. So yeah, this I love. I fell in love with the neckline, I fell in love with the shoulder details, and I just decided to knit myself another jumper because I don't actually have that many. Even though I've been knitting for quite a few years now, I don't knit garments very fast. So this is just another one to add to my list. So they are my finished objects. There's not too many, but the knitting bug has taken a hold, and I've really been enjoying thinking about different things I need in my wardrobe. I am really taken by the idea of wearing things that are really practical and beautiful. So that kind of links into my sewing project, but I will talk about my last knitting whip first, which is another practical knit that I've dreamt of for a long, long time. And that is the Eastwind by Emily Foden in the Knits About Winter book. I have wanted to knit this jacket for a long time, and I've had the toggles for it for ages. I have these beautiful Red Deer Scottish antler toggles, which I'll put a picture of. And I didn't know what colour I wanted for the longest time, and because I couldn't make my mind up, I just decided to wait and put it off until the yarn came to me. And the yarn did indeed come to me. I went to the Scottish Yarn Festival with my friend Ailey, who nurtured me through the rider and gave me my spare Moreau colourway. Oh, I didn't mention that, did I? The Nutidin is in the colour Moreau, which means carrot, I believe. And we went to the festival and we saw that Uist Wool had a new DK base called Alba, which is the Gaelic word for Scotland, and it's a beautiful blend, and it's Cheviot, Shetland and Manx. So it's got beautiful flecks of that Manx and that brown. It reads a little bit as grey, but in person it's got a beautiful warm brown tone to it. Maybe if I put it next to a neutral, you can see the true colour. That works a lot better. You can see that the grey tone isn't actually as strong as the browns. And when I saw this, I knew this was the colour I needed for my Eastwind. I didn't have a plan for the colour work, so the hems and the pockets are in a contrasting colour, and I hadn't decided on that yet. Excuse the revving engine. And I decided to put up on my Patreon a call for an Eastwind cal. So there's about 5 or 6 of us who are knitting this together. I'm actually casting this on this evening with Ailey, which will be really fun. I've been putting off casting this on for ages. And so I knit some swatches. And those of you who know the Eastwind know that it's held with a mohair. It's a DK wool with the mohair. I personally don't really like using mohair in my practice. I don't love the look of it and I don't love the feel of it. So I'd rather not use it. I've got nothing against it other than it just doesn't really call to me. So I tried a swatch with 1 strand of Nutidin with the Alba, and it is beautiful. However, the gauge was way off. This was not going to work, and the Nutiden overtook the beautiful colours of the Alba, and it's a beautiful fabric in its own right, but it didn't highlight the wool in the way I wanted it to, so that was a bust. And then I knit just a swatch with the Alba held by itself without the mohair, and I got gauge, but I felt like it was a bit too gappy. And you'll see here that I've picked my contrast colour, and I just picked up along the swatch and knit my suggested colour, which I'll talk about in a minute. But that I got gauge with that, but again, I thought it was maybe a little bit too gappy and the wind would go through it too much. So I went down a needle size and I knit another swatch, and I'm much happier with the gauge on this. So this is 3.75 millimeters and this is 4 millimeters, which the pattern suggests. And the contrast colour I'm using is some Hand-spun from, again, you might guess already, but it's from Beck from the Woven Briar. And this is from one of her sheep called Barbara. And Beck, lovely as she is, sent me some pictures of Barbara, which I'll put up on the screen for you. And Barbara is an Icelandic sheep, and she had a beautiful golden fleece, and I'm not sure how well it will show up, but it's got this beautiful pearlescent quality to it with a lot of kind of brown and different specks in it. And it almost reads in a certain light as a very, very soft pink, and it's a beautiful wool. It really takes the light in the room and kind of reflects it. So it's a beautiful luminescent wool. So I had 50 grams, I think, from my fleece box in raw fleece, and I carded this up and I spun it woolen from Rolags. And I think I did it on my new wheel, which is in the background here. I got a vintage Bill Stables wheel, and it came with like a spinning chair, which I don't know if you can see in the background there. And it's kind of based on an Irish flax wheel. It's got a distaff, and yeah, it's wonderful. And I'll probably talk more about that in another episode. But I have a video on Patreon of me refurbishing the wheel. It was in a bit of a state when I got it, so it's all been repaired by me, and yeah, you can find that on my Patreon. To use this with the contrast of the Alba. They just work really well together, and it's nice and muted, but they've both got the warm tones. But I think in the winter, in the snow, not that we get much snow here in Edinburgh, but in the snow, I think this will really reflect the light of winter beautifully, and in the autumn it will reflect the warm colours in the trees. So it's a best of both worlds. So that is the other project that I've been working on. I will cast that on this evening, like I say, so I'll be working on this most of winter, I would guess, with my speed, and probably doing some spinning on the side and also doing gift knits. I'm not really going to talk about gift knits on this podcast. I'm just going to share the projects that are really calling to me at the minute. And plus I think my sister watches this, so I don't want to show you the big project I'm working on for her. I'll probably feature that after Christmas on the winter podcast. But I'm knitting my sister The Frost from Emily Foden, which is also from the Knits About Winter book. And I'm using Isager, I don't really know how to say it, mohair. So you'll all know that yarn. And I'm tinkering away on that as I go. And yeah, it's been fun. I'm really loving knitting at the moment, and I'm mostly loving spinning, but I'm really excited by the Eastwind, and I think it's going to go beautifully with the toggles I have as well. So I'm sure I'll keep you up to date on that progress. And yeah, that's all I have for knitting today. I have a little bit of a sewing project to share with you in the theme of making things that are both practical and beautiful. I wanted to self-draft a skirt that fit me perfectly and was designed for hiking in. So this is the skirt I came up with. It needs a bit of a press, but it's a gathered skirt with 2 tiers, and it goes to mid-calf. I'll have some pictures of it to put up. But it goes up to mid-calf so that it doesn't get caught on anything as I'm walking. It has a split up the right leg so that my leading leg when I hike can be free and hike up steep hills. It also has really big pockets so that I can put lots of treasures in there, which you'll see from my trip to the Isle of Arran. I had so many shells in these pockets on the coast. And I have so many of them with me that I'm so inspired by. And Arran has really interesting geology. It's the kind of the place where James Hutton, the grandfather, or I guess people call him the father of modern geology, he noticed the concept of deep time, that the earth was actually older than was previously thought. And it has really interesting stones and really beautiful things to find on the beach. So I was collecting so many things for me to make objects with. That one's not showing very well. It's a lovely crescent shell. And yeah, like I say, was gathering so much stuff. So I knew I would want to be able to collect natural treasures in the pockets. So they're really deep. And yeah, I think that's all there is to it. It's all French seamed in the side seams and the waistband and the pockets. So the pockets are all, all of the raw edges are enclosed. And yeah, it was just some basic maths to come up with the size of the pattern pieces that I needed. And yeah, I love it. It does the job. It's practical. It's really tough wearing, and it's from a linen from Merchant and Mills. Is it Merchant Mills or Merchant and Mills? It's a British fabric shop, and yeah, I love their range. And it's a gingham, and I hand sewed the waistband and some of the French seamed bits for the slit on the side. And yeah, I really love it. I will show you some footage or a picture of me wearing it. And I had some leftover fabric, so I made I think it's called the ST side top from a maker called Steph on Instagram. I will put the link for this pattern in the show notes. That's the front. And it's a reversible top, and it just has these little side ties, and it's perfect on its own in the summer or with a long sleeve top or a jumper underneath. It's kind of like a chest plate in armour, which I really love about it. And I used the same fabric on one of the sides, and then I used a corduroy fabric that I found in a charity shop on the other side. So I have a corduroy option and a gingham option, and the corduroy goes really well with the colour of this skirt as well. And again, I probably do have some pictures to share with you. So yeah, that's the other thing I was working on during the summer. I do tend to gravitate more towards sewing things in the summer with cottons and linens, and my wools in the winter, which is, I think it's nice to have the phases of using both materials. So that's everything that I have to share with you today. Like I say, I've been working on some other things, but I will save that for next time because it's doubtful that I'll have as much to share considering it's been 6 or 7 months since the last episode. So I really hope that you enjoyed catching up with me. Thank you so much to everyone who's a patron and who has supported me during this hiatus. It's been a very, very busy time, and I've really enjoyed the community that I have over there. So thank you for your continued support and for making it financially possible for me to do this. And yeah, I really hope to see more of you over there if you would like. Thank you for watching, and please do, if you like this content, subscribe, like this video. It feels really odd to say that, but because I don't upload very frequently, my videos can get a bit lost or people don't know that I have uploaded. So please do put the notification bell on if you don't want to miss an episode, or just check in sporadically. Like I say, it takes a little while for me to put these up, but I really do love doing it to share with you and to connect with you all. So I hope you're all doing so well, and I would love to hear how you are and what you've been working on. And I wonder what your ideas are on this concept of beauty and practicality working alongside one another. It really has taken me, and I've been really inspired by watching kind of historical movies and seeing all the fashion in them, and it really brings me so much joy to be able to make clothes that make me feel very grounded and very loved and nurtured. It's an absolute privilege to be able to do that, and I don't take it for granted. So yeah, I'd love to catch up with you, so please do get in touch. If you ever want to chat, please just send me a message. I'm always there, and I love chatting to you. And I hope you have a really lovely cozy winter, and I hope you stay warm and that you have lots of projects to keep you happy and inspired and nurtured. And I will catch up with you soon. Take care, everyone, and enjoy this footage from the Isle of Arran. Sending lots of love. Bye.